The Queen of New York and Sir Meerkat. Chapter 1. Sebastian isn't entirely sure how this happened. How did he, Sebastian Smythe, breeze through Harvard, both undergrad and law, so spectacularly that he was receiving offers from firms all over the country? Of course, the day the Pearson Spector offer had shown up, he'd signed on. Despite being a large firm, they had a rather underdeveloped international law team, which meant he could go in and do what he did best, take over and shine. Take over he had, and in such a manner that he'd caught the attention of both Jessica and Harvey, the named partners. It had been refreshing. Both were more than capable of keeping up with him, and that was something he hadn't found since, well, that wasn't something he let himself think about. At least it hadn't been until he heard that voice. The distinct tinkling bell of a laugh. Like a moth to a flame, Sebastian turned and was drawn toward Jessica's office, where the sound was coming from. He raised a brow when he saw Harvey coming down the hall from the other direction, as if he, too, were following the siren song that was Kurt Hummel's voice. Harvey entered first and was 3 steps in when he stilled, eyes raking over the beautiful man standing at Jessica's window, looking out over the city. His mouth had actually gone dry. His lips quirked up just at the corner, and he wondered what brought the beauty here, and why Jessica got him. He just opened his mouth when the new brat, Sebastian, walked right by him toward Harvey's new prey. He could hear Louis just behind him. The other man joined their little band of interlopers and audibly gasped at the tall beauty and audacity of the new brat. Well, princess. What brings you to my corner of the city? Sebastian's hands were in his pockets as he leaned against the arm of the sofa with his ankles crossed. Kurt's posture stiffened for just a moment before he turned on Sebastian, a single brow raised. Oh God, this was going to be so much fun. Kurt pursed his lips, letting his eyes take in his old rival. Don't slouch, you're ruining the lines of that beautifully crafted suit. He scoffed then. Really, Meerkat? Was Wolfram and Hart not hiring? Or were you just one of those small-time demons who was too far down the totem pole to matter? Icy blue eyes flashed. Throwing his head back to laugh, Sebastian looked back up. Did you just pull out a Buffy reference? Really, Hummel? He was still chuckling when he spoke again. You still haven't told me what the frack you're doing here, Curtsy. 1. Only Jeff is permitted to call me that. 2. Only Noah may call me princess. 3. This was my city first, so frack off and be glad I'm allowing you to continue to breathe the same air as me, and not having your smirky, little butt deported back to Ohio. The smile Kurt wore matched the saccharine sweet voice he was speaking with, but his eyes were dancing with fire. Snorting, Sebastian was forced to cover his mouth to keep from full-on smiling. Going back and forth with Harvey was fun and kept him on his toes. Jessica was as well, to a far lesser extent, but she was a very scary woman. Neither, however, gave him the same satisfaction he got from going at it with Kurt. Nick was right. It's kind of hot when you curse. He winked at a now blushing Kurt. But having me deported out of New York? Yeah, you're kind of a queen. Less so now than in Lima. Congratulations, by the way, you know, for becoming a man, but you aren't actually royalty. Wide, blue eyes just stared at Sebastian before Kurt covered his mouth with one long-fingered elegant hand. Stepping forward, his face wore a mask of sorrow and worry. Everyone in the room was confused at his sudden change. Oh, Sebastian, my poor, smirky, little Meerkat. How long do you have? He put a hand on the green-eyed man's forehead as if he were checking for fever. When he only got a confused look and arched brow from the ex-warbler, Kurt smirked. You're obviously dying, sweetie. This might come as a shock, but you just complimented me. Don't worry. You don't have to hide your man pain. You're surrounded by friends, well, no. You don't have friends, but only whatever your version is. Leaning forward, Sebastian's forehead rested on Kurt's shoulder because he was doubling over laughing so hard. When he finally got control of himself, his eyes met bright glaze. Your smirky little meerkat? The grin he was wearing now was nothing short of shit-eating. Scoffing, Kurt stepped away, his pointer finger going to the center of Sebastian's forehead, and pushing, ensuring he sent the lawyer falling back onto the body of the sofa. Dream on, Smythe. Blaine will be back on the market sooner, rather than later, I hope. I can give you his number if you still want. Turning, Kurt gathered his coat and messenger bag. As he made for the door, he stopped and looked Harvey up and down. Sebastian frowned as he saw lust on Kurt's usually guarded face. You have to be Harvey. Jessica answered from behind in the affirmative and Kurt sighed. Damn. Now I owe Michael $20 and his choice of my theater tickets. There was an adorable pout on the pale man's lips. Thank you for your time, Jessica. Please give me a call when you need to meet up again. Swaying out of the office, he called over his shoulder. If you show up at my coffee house, I'm getting a restraining order, or curtains for that back room you'll start renting out. Before Sebastian could respond, Kurt was gone and he was being stared down with varying expressions of amusement, bewilderment, and one with challenge. What? He stood, straightening himself out, and acting as if the last 10 minutes hadn't just happened. We have a bit of a competitive past. You know that, Angel? Lewis finally came into the office, stepping around Harvey. What? How? Do you know who he is? The bald man was flush, seeming like an overly excited fanboy. Yes, Lewis. I know him and probably quite a bit more than you. Since high school, actually. He smirks. Kurt Elizabeth Hummel. Only countertenor in recent Ohio show choir history. Always the designated driver. Disgustingly monogamous. Besties with baby Barbara and Satan. NYADA graduate, and making quite the name for himself on Broadway, and in fashion. From what he said, I'm assuming he's divorcing his lying, cheating, bow-tie-wearing, high school sweetheart. His eyes hardened a touch when he looked to Harvey. The littlest princess seems to have a rather disturbing dapper gentleman kink. Sebastian looked at Lewis once more, shrugging as his hands made their way back into his pockets as he headed for the door, much as Kurt had. Oh, his father's a congressman and mechanic. So Kurt was raised around a car shop. If the Warbler gossips can be believed, he's had his mechanic's license since he could legally obtain one. He also didn't watch Supernatural for the hot man candy, but the car, and he broke the TV in the Commons when it was put to death. Sebastian was just trying to picture that little meltdown and shook his head, laughing as he headed for his office. What just happened here? Harvey blinked at Jessica and then at Lewis. For her part, the managing partner settled into her seat, beginning to laugh. Oh, this is going to be fun to watch. That, Harvey, was Mr. Anderson Hummel, who is divorcing his philandering husband. Blaine Anderson was caught when his current bedmate approached his husband for money to keep quiet about Blaine's extracurricular activities. Mike is a friend of Kurt's and referred him to us. I've decided to take a personal interest in his case. She shrugged, eyes dancing as they met her protégés. Harvey chuckled with a shake of his head. In other words, he's rich and famous, and you want your name and face in the papers for this one. Let me know when the divorce is final. I'll buy a celebratory dinner. Leaning back in her chair, Jessica crossed her legs. Oh, I don't know, Harvey. It looks like Sebastian has a head start there. She was already enjoying this show, and it only promised to get better. Harvey glared at her, but turned on his heel, striding out of her office with Lewis at his heels, yapping like a cocker spaniel. Oh, yeah. This was going to be fun.